The average female is 5'2" or 1.57 meters. Our crewmates
returning back with another top 5 list in the top 5 ranking series, and in today's video we have is the top 5 forgotten towers in TDS. We are not going to be including any dev towers or more or less secretive towers, and we're definitely not including any starter towers because those guys are generally bad. Well, an exception for the gold ones though.
Number 18.
At the number 5 spot we have is the shotgunner. So the shotgunner is essentially a guy with a close range super shorty shotgun, or whatever you want to call them. And it generally does a mish of about a damage. However, the more you upgrade it, of course, the more damage, shotgun pellets, and of course the more range that is actually increased. At max, this man literally does 66 damage hit points, and that's just for one enemy. And of course, he essentially pierces many enemies, allowing him to hit multiple enemies at the exact same time. Quite honestly, a pretty good starting tower. However, you're probably wondering at this point, so if he's pretty good, why is he on this list? Well, that's because even though this man does perform quite well, he is definitely 100% of the time outmatched by much better options. Again, this man doesn't have much of a big range, however, does a crap load amount of damage. But you know who else also does a crap lot of damage and has a pretty small range? Melee towers such as the Brawler, Sledger, melee towers in general. And even for towers that are starting towers as well, you have guys like, for an example, Cowboys, the Militant, the Soldier, or G-Soldier more or less. Just much better options in general, while this man, on the other hand, is pretty good at first, but once you get into the much later waves, he is definitely not as good as everyone else. Not a bad tower, but definitely outmatched.
Number 4.
Turning away into the number 4 spot is the Slasher. Now, in the previous video I did a while back, I pretty much explained all of, or mostly a bunch of the negatives for the Slasher, so I might as well go ahead and reiterate them for people who didn't watch it or who did, I don't know. But essentially, the Slasher is a pretty high damaging melee DPS dude, and with a small range, and of course with the shank, he is essentially the Warden, but without the whole stun ability, but can still do critical hits. And that's pretty much the Slasher that I explained in under like 10 seconds essentially. There's really not a lot to the Slasher, but don't get me wrong, the damage is a pretty okay-ish amount. Like literally this man does 60 damage per slice attack, and critical hits, which I'm pretty sure is like every single hit after like a certain level, is 240. So quite honestly, a pretty high damaging melee tower. So then you're probably wondering at this point, so of course, why is he on this list and not on a top 5 best list or whatever? And that's because of these many different negatives. Firstly, he's pretty fucking expensive to place down. 1,250 just to place down, which is not exactly, you know, super cheap, but not really expensive, okay? And secondly, you got other melee towers like Sledger, who can of course do very hard amount of damage and slow them down. Then you've got other guys like Brawler, of course, who can push back enemies and deal critical hits as well. And of course, the Warden, who also stuns enemies and does critical damage. This man essentially does critical damage, but nothing else, which is why he's on this list, especially when I've seen no one at all use this man. He is 100% outmatched by all of the other melee towers by a long shot.
Number 7.
Not much of a surprise, number 3 spot is the Gladiator. Back before, I believe, the Fallen rework, he was essentially one of the most popular towers in TDS, especially in the early waves, since this man can literally target 3 enemies at the exact same time or more, and can deal a decent amount of damage. But this was only temporarily, since as waves go by, enemies get more and more HP, and of course become stronger and faster, to where the Gladiator cannot perform really too well, but hey, he has an ability to make him a bit better, where he can increase his rate of fire swings, as you can say, and I believe probably increase his damage. I could be wrong about that though. However, as soon as the reworked game modes started to come out, this man pretty much had basically fallen super hard from from the spotlight. Not only that, but also other towers, especially in the early waves category, had also gotten just much more buffed, such as the Golden Cowboy, Golden Soldier, and definitely a few much more others that actually make a huge difference in the end of the day. This man, on the other hand, as soon as it gets past like wave 6 or something like that, he pretty much is just completely useless at that point in every single game mode. Well, at least everything before, I guess, intermediate mode, you could say. This man's damage is laughably bad, and of course he's a melee tower, which means he's not gonna have a big enough range, and his ability is just not really that good as well. This man's performance is laughably bad, but at least he can actually do something, unlike the next spot on this list.
Number 10.
And number 2 spot is the Snowballer. Now, in the previous video that I basically stated about the worst towers in TDS, I pretty much put him, I believe, like at the number 3 spot or something. I can't really remember. But this man, oh Jesus Christ, dude. Now, the only reason I actually remembered about the existence is that whenever I'm looking in the exclusive category section, I actually see his stupid face like many times. I don't know why he sticks out like a sore thumb, but he just does. And the other reason why I even remembered about this man's existence was because, no joke, I literally had someone bring him into the Ducky event. I am not capping. And of course, we lost. But anyway, aside from that, what does this man actually do? Well, he throws snowballs that do very little damage and slow enemies down. That's pretty much it. He is extremely cheap and doesn't really do much. Now, I guess you could say he actually does do something because he slows down enemies, and even though his damage is a bit lacking, he at least does something, right? Well, you know who else also slows down enemies and with a long-ranged weapon-ish and also can do it at a faster rate of fire? The Freezer, with a literal spammy pistol, okay? And quite honestly, this man was a huge letdown when we unlocked him in the Christmas event. But you know who's someone else who is downright extinct at this point that I have not seen anyone use at all, and that's who the number 1 spot is going to.
Number 1.
Check this out.
The most dead, forgotten, and downright extinct tower in TDS we have is the Hollow Punk. I am 100% certain every single one of you fuckers have completely forgotten about this chick. It's really rare for me to forget a tower's existence, especially when they're a woman. So first things first is, what exactly is the Hollow Punk? Well, released during the EXO event and beating it on easy mode, she is essentially a character that can be placed down immediately with 300 bucks. And already by that price, you are already having some red flags because they have an RPG and they are 300 bucks to place down. Okay, so that seems extremely sus. At literally the very first level, they do 3 damage. Yes, 3 fucking damage. That is it. At max, they do approximately 60 damage per rocket launcher attack. And of course, including the knockback, being able to push back enemies, having some burn damage, how long it causes, quite honestly, it is pretty okay-ish at those later levels. And she only has 3 levels for some reason. So quite honestly, she's not terrible. But you know who else has an RPG and who got immensely reworked? The Rocketeer, who is just downright better, especially when they have a literal woman Valentine skin. Okay, so that's another 1-up thing. Now, if I were to put this chick on a tier list, I could probably put her like on D tier or something. And I don't mean D tier by status or performance wise, I mean D tier by that way.
He's pulling his car.